بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. Inshallah, from this week we'll be beginning a series on Shamaa-il-Tirmidhii. This kitab, Shamaa-il-Tirmidhii, is a collection of hadith regarding outlining the physical descriptions and the character of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In total, it's a collection of approximately 397 ahadith, which has been divided into 55 chapters. Now, before we begin this kitab, first we have to briefly just mention who was Imam Tirmidhi. His full name, Abu Isa Muhammad ibn Isa ibn Sawra al-Tirmidhi. He was a great scholar of hadith, so also the author or the person who compiled famous kitab by the name of Jami'-al-Tirmidhi. There are many books that have been written on ahadith, that have been compiled on ahadith, which 6 have been given a special acceptance by Allah and have become very well renowned, very famous. These are referred to Sahih Sitta: Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Ibn Majah. So this Tirmidhi is generally ranked 4th after Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, and Tirmidhi. So this Kitab Tirmidhi, so Imam Tirmidhi is a great scholar, born many years ago. The scholars they mentioned he was approximately born in the year 209th, or some scholars they say he was born 210th Hijri, after the migration of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Madinatul Munawwara. According to the Islamic calendar, he was born in either this 209th or 210th year of Hijri. And to be a muhaddith, to be a compiler of a hadith, at that time they never had a lot of external storage that we have like today. So everything they had to memorize. So this Imam Tirmidhi, he had an amazing memory. They had to memorize thousands upon thousands of ahadith and chains of narration. And in this Shamaa-il-Tirmidhii that has been written by Imam Tirmidhi, even though it was written so many years ago, in many places all over the world, this has been studied and it is been taught and has received a special acceptance from Allah. Even though many kitabs have been written in regarding the descriptions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the character of our beloved Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but this kitab has been granted a special acceptance and it is very well renowned. And when we study this kitab, you will see that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum that quote Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the descriptions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they are those Sahaba, the companions, who spent a lot of time in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like you have likes of Anas radiallahu anhu, he served Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for a period of 10 years. Abdullah ibn Abbas, a relative of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, also a relative. So these people, they stayed in their company and they give detailed accounts, or they tried their best to provide as much detail as to the physical attributes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We cannot do justice cannot be done in trying to describe the physical attributes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the Sahaba, they went as far as they could to try and preserve the physical description of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his character. And the reason why we study these types of kitabs are when we study the life of a person, especially in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have been told, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Quran, إِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. You are of the most exalted character. You are of the highest character. So when we study about a person, when we talk and we listen and we research a person, naturally the love for that person in our hearts will increase. We will develop an inclination towards that person. And because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is our role model in this world, and if we wish to be successful in this world and in the hereafter, we must follow in the teachings shown to us by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every believer, we say La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. In doing so, we believe that in following the path of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we will attain success in both worlds. So by studying these kitabs like this, by studying about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will increase, and we will get to know more about the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how he treated other people, how he dealt with other people, what his character was like, what his physical attributes were like. This will all be discussed in this kitab. So in the first chapter, Tirmidhi, he mentions the chapter regarding the physical appearance of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So alhamdulillah wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina istafa. The first chapter, the heading, باب ما جاء في خلق رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. The chapter regarding the physical appearance of Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم. So the first hadith has been narrated. وبه قال أخبرنا أبو رجاء قتيبة بن سعيد عن مالك بن أنس عن ربيعة بن أبي عبد الرحمن عن أنس بن مالك أنه سمعه يقول كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ليس بالطويل البائن ولا بالقصير ولا بالأبيض الأمهق ولا بالآدمي ولا بالجعد القاطط ولا بالسبط بعثه الله تعالى على رأس 40 سنة فأقام بمكة 10 سنين وبالمدينة 10 سنين وتوفاه الله على رأس 60 سنة وليس في رأسه ولحيته 20 شعرة بيضاء. So inshallah we'll discuss one hadith at a time. The first hadith, it has been narrated by Anas radiallahu anhu. That Anas radiallahu anhu narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was neither tall nor short. Like a dwarf, he was of a medium stature. So the first hadith he mentions about the height of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and Nabi sallallahu was neither very tall, neither was he very short. His complexion was neither white like lime nor dark. He was illuminant, more luminous than even the full moon on the 14th night. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's hair was neither straight nor curly. It was slightly wavy. When he reached the age of 40, Allah Most High granted him nubuwwah, the first 10 years of which he lived in Makkah Mukarramah. He lived for another 10 years in Medina Munawwara and passed away at the age of 60. At that time, there were not more than 20 white hair on his Mubarak head and beard. So this was just a rough translation of this hadith. So inshallah, we should look at some commentary on what has been said regarding this hadith. So in some hadith, we will find that some Sahaba there narrate that in another hadith he has been narrated when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he stood amongst a group of people, he appeared to be the tallest amongst them. And in this hadith that we just read, the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was neither tall nor was he short. So there appears to be a contradiction. So how do we remove that contradiction, and how do you understand the hadith? So the scholars, they explain that the hadith in which when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam stood amongst a group of people and he used to stand out, this was an account of a mu'jiza, a special miracle given to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was physically taller than everyone else, but this was a mu'jiza. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was made to look ma'nan, that he was made to appear taller than the rest of the people. Accordingly, no one could reach a high status than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in kamalat ma'nawiyya, in excellence. Another thing to mention in this hadith that was mentioned, that he was neither white like lime nor dark. This will be covered later on. And also in this hadith he was mentioned that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he spent 10 years in Makkah and 10 years in Medina. In other hadith we find that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he spent, after receiving nubuwwah, prophethood at the age of 40, he spent 13 years in Makkah and another 10 years in Medina. Hence, he passed away at the age of 63. So how do you reconcile these ahadith? So there's 3 different ahadith mentioned regarding this. Most ahadith mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam lived for a period of 23 years. So the ulama, they have summed up the hadith in 2 ways. Number 1, that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like I mentioned, received nubuwwah, prophethood at the age of 40, and risala, that he began to receive divine messages 3 years later. And there was, after he was granted prophethood, 3 years there was no wahi, no revelation came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and divine messages began to be revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam after a period of 3 years. And so, at the age of 14, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam receives prophethood. For 3 years, no divine messages are sent to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then 3 years, after 3 years, the wahi begins to descend, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam begins to receive revelation and divine messages. And then from this point onwards, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he lives in Makkah for a period of 10 years. Then he migrates to Medina, and he lives in Medina for a period of 10 years, and he passes away. So to understand the hadith in which Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which he mentions Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam lived in Makkah for 10 years, that these 3 years in which the Risala, the divine message, was, it never accounted for these 3 years at the beginning. So the person narrating those ahadith, in which Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam lived in Makkah for 10 years, and then in Medina for another 10 years, it does not count it does not include the 3 years in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not receive Risala. Another way to understand this is that often when people calculate something, they do not include fractions or small numbers. So for this reason, Sayyidinaa Anas radiallahu anhu might have just calculated by the tens in a hadith, instead of calculating the units, the 1, 2, and 3, just counted in tens, 10 years in Makkah and 10 years in Medina. And in some ahadith in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioned that he lived to the age of 65, the way we can reconcile this is that the years of birth and death are included separately. In short, all the content of all our hadith is the same. So according to most authentic narrations, the age of Sayyidinaa Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was 63, and so therefore the ahadith regarding this matter can be reconciled with him passing away at that age. Then the second hadith, وبه قال حدثنا حميد بن مسعدة البصري قال حدثنا عبد الوهاب الثقفي عن حميد عن أنس بن مالك قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ربعة ليس بالطويل ولا بالقصير حسن الجسم وكان شعره ليس بجعد ولا سبط أسمر اللون إذا مشى يتكفى. So in the second hadith, Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, he said, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was of a medium stature. Like we just mentioned in that, he was mentioned in the previous hadith. He was neither tall, very tall, nor short. He was very handsome, of a medium build. His hair was neither very curly nor very straight. Rather, it was slightly wavy. So the hair was not completely straight, nor was it very curly, but it was just a mix between the slightly wavy. Now he had a wheat-colored complexion, and when he walked, he leaned forward slightly. Okay, so in this hadith regarding the color of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi, the complexion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as we narrated that he had a wheat-colored complexion, and in the previous hadith, so is also narrated by Anas radiallahu anhu. So both of these ahadith have been narrated by Anas radiallahu anhu. The first hadith, he mentions that he was in complexion, he was neither white like lime nor was he dark. And here it is mentioned that he had a wheat-colored complexion. So how do you understand this? That Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was not of such a dark complexion that would decrease a person's aura and beauty, but he was of a radiant light color with a slight wheat-colored complexion. And in the final words, كان إذا مشى, when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to walk, يتكفأ or يتكفأ. It is describing the walk, how Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to walk. So there are different ways in the ulama to interpret this word, the word يتكفأ. Some scholars interpret this that it means to walk hastily, not to walk slow, sluggish, to walk with pace. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he used to walk, he used to walk hurriedly with pace. He never used to walk very slow. Some of the opinion that it means yatakaffa means to slightly lean forward whilst walking, not to walk upright while sticking one's chest out, but to slightly lean forward. And some others say, the third opinion, that it means to lift the legs with force. So all three explanations of this are correct, because Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his walk fulfilled all three descriptions. Firstly, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam never used to walk very slow, he used to walk hastily. Secondly, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to lean forward whilst walking, he never used to stick his chest out and walk with pride. And thirdly, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would lift his legs up with force, and he never used to drag himself, and this was not the habit of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And the third hadith of this chapter, وبه قال حدثنا محمد بن بشار يعني عن العبدية قال حدثنا محمد بن جعفر قال حدثنا شعبة عن أبي إسحاق قال سمعت البراء بن عازب يقول كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رجلا مربوعا وعيد ما بين المنكبين عظيم الجمة إلى شحمة أذنيه عليه حلة حمراء ما رأيت شيئا قط أحسن منه. Bara ibn Azib radiallahu anhu related that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was a man of medium build, slightly tall as explained previously. He had broad shoulders. So from this we understand is implied the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had a broad chest, had a wide chest. And then explaining the hair, he had thick hair that reached his earlobes, and he wore a red striped lungi. The Urdu word for this is a lungi, like a cloth in which you cover the waist, and shawl. I never saw anyone or anything more handsome than him. So Bara ibn Azib is narrating, I never saw anyone more beautiful than him. So in this hadith, the word rajulan marbu'an is used. So when you say rajulan with a dhamma, it means a man. It refers to rajulun, it refers to a person, a man. Rajulan marbu'an. And some muhaddithun, so if you put this i'rab on it, with a dhamma, then there's no quality that has been derived here. No special quality has been derived. It's just a man which was marbu' of a medium stature. But if this is read with a zabar, with a fatha on the jim, rajalan, as opposed to rajulan. If you read it rajalan, then it means something between straight and bent. Not something between being straight and bent. So that's why some muhaddithin, they say it's possible here that it refers to the description of the hair of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as described before, that it was not completely straight, nor was it very curly, but it was between the two, it had slightly curly. Had a slight curl. So, and then finally, in the final part of this hadith, Bara ibn Azib, he mentions, I never saw anyone or anything more beautiful than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was more beautiful than any other creation, more beautiful than the moon, more beautiful than anything. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the most beautiful creation that he had seen. And then hadith number 4 of this bab. وبه قال حدثنا محمود بن غيلان قال حدثنا وكيع قال حدثنا سفيان عن أبي إسحاق عن البراء بن عازب قال ما رأيت من ذي لمة في حلة حمراء أحسن من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم له شعر يضرب منكبيه وعد ما بين المنكبين لم يكن بالقصير ولا بالطويل. So Bara ibn Azib radiallahu anhu said, I have never seen anyone with long hair in red clothing more handsome than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His hair reached his shoulders, and between them the space was wide. He was neither very tall nor short. So in different hadith regarding the hair of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, different hadith have been mentioned, and some narrations you will find that that the hair used to reach to the earlobes. Sometimes you'll find in narrations that the hair used to reach to the shoulders, and sometimes in between. So there is no contradiction in this, as obviously a person's hair, as time the hair of a person grows with the passing of time. So sometimes Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam hair would be to the earlobes, and when it used to grow longer, you'd reach up to the shoulders. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to understand what's been said, and also increase our may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes this a means of increasing our love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and make Allah may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to follow in the footsteps and in the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Inshallah, we will continue here from hadith number 5 of the first chapter next week.